Canada is a country famed throughout the world for its vast wilderness and rugged natural beauty. From the misty rainforests of the Pacific, through the majestic Rocky Mountains, to the quaint vistas of the Maritimes, Canada's natural wonders attract millions of tourists from all over the world every year. Of all of Canada's native marvels, among the most spectacular is the Aurora Borealis, phantasmal ribbons of blue, green, red, and violet light, which cavort across the night sky in northern latitudes, more commonly known as the Northern Lights. Scientists attribute this enchanting aerial display to the violent interaction between the Earth's atmosphere and plasma ejected from the Sun, the latter having overpowered the Earth's magnetic field and invaded the Arctic skies at the North Pole. Long before the concepts of magnetic fields and solar winds entered the catalogue of human knowledge, Canada's Inuit and Dene Indians puzzled over the mystery of the dazzling nocturnal luminosities that danced across their northern skies, and developed their own ideas as to their nature. In a previous piece, we referenced the old Inuit superstition that those who whistle at the northern lights run the risk of being snatched up by the aurora and carried off into the sky. Some Indigenous Canadian viewers who commented on that piece elaborated that, according to the traditions of their people, whistlers unfortunate enough to be picked up by the northern lights will have their heads separated from their bodies and tossed across the sky, in a manner suggestive of some gruesome celestial ballgame. American ethnologist Edward William Nelson referenced two less horrific variations of this belief in his 1899 book, The Eskimo About Bering Strait, describing the ballgame as a sort of hybrid of soccer or non-American football and the playground game Red Rover, in which the members of one team, standing shoulder to shoulder in a solid line, attempt to kick the ball through the line of opposing players. The northern lights of winter, he wrote, are said by these people to be the boys playing this game. Others say that it is a game being played by shades, using walrus skulls as balls. There are other native Canadian traditions regarding the Aurora Borealis, which have been referenced in classic ethnological writings. For example, in a 1912 article for the Geological Survey of Canada, Scots-Canadian anthropologist James Tate described an old Tahltan belief that the northern lights were the dancing ghosts of warriors killed in battle, the Tahltan being a Dene people native to northwest British Columbia. There is a strong belief in the rebirth of souls, Tate wrote. A deceased relative is often born again by a mother, aunt, sister, or other relative. Witchcraft is believed in, witches being a class distinct from shamans. The dead go to 3 different places: a rather cool, dingy place underground to the west, a light, agreeable place on the same level as the earth to the east, and a place above in the sky. Only people killed in battle go to the last. Sometimes they come out and dance as the aurora. When the latter consists of red clouds, people say there is a war somewhere. When the streamers of the aurora descend, forming a kind of chute, it is said that the spirits are receiving a brave warrior, whose soul ascends through this chute, and is borne away as the streamers ascend. The association between the red aurora and an ongoing or impending martial conflict is echoed in the traditions of the Stoney Indians, a Siouan people who ensconced themselves in the Canadian Rockies in the late 1700s. As anthropologist Adela C. Breton put it in her article on the Stoney, published in the May 1920 issue of the journal Man, they believe the northern lights to be the spirits of the dead, and that when red in color, battle is coming. Before the late war, that is World War I, there was a display of red lights, foretelling it to them. A Plains Cree elder named Old Kiam, a member of the Thunderchild First Nation just southwest of Turtle Lake, Saskatchewan, saw the red lights which preceded the Great War in the summer of 1914. He related his experience to Saskatchewan folklorist Reverend Edward Akenahue, an Anglican priest of Cree heritage. Old Kiam's story, transcribed by Akenahue, was published in the latter's posthumous 1973 book, Voices of the Plains Cree. In order to make sense of Old Kiam's story, we must first become familiar with the story of Chief Starblanket. Starblanket was a Plains Cree chief from what is now central Saskatchewan, who saw red lights in the night sky in late March 1885. A few days later, both Métis revolutionary Louis Riel and a Plains Cree band under the command of Chief Big Bear independently declared war against the Canadian government, sparking a conflict known today as the Northwest Rebellion. "Come, my children," Starblanket said to his followers on the night the omen appeared. "Come from your teepees. see how the spirits of the departed dance. Lo, the lights are red. Prepare to learn of pestilence and troubles in our land, or the shedding of blood. When the ghost dance is red, calamity is at hand. So it has been taught by our old men. A few days later, the Battle of Duck Lake, the opening engagement of the Northwest Rebellion, was fought between Riel's militia and the Northwest Mounted Police nearby. 29 years later, in the summer of 1914, Old Kayam saw a similar sign in the Saskatchewan sky. I was traveling that summer for about 2 weeks, the elder told Henneque, going from one reserve to another. I had a little white boy with me, a missionary's son, but we had been meeting only Indians, talking only of what concerned them, and always in Cree. I had said that if the boy wanted to travel with me, it had to be as one of us, in our way. On our last night, however, we camped near a homesteader's shack, and we had supper there and talked English. After we had gone to our tent, we heard the settler's wife calling to us to come out and see the northern lights. They were red. I have never seen a more magnificent display. Now usually when I'm with white people, I try to do as they do, even to think as they do. I told those people the story of Chief Starblanket and his words. I joked about it a little, saying that if the old man had still been alive, that sky would most surely have brought all his prophetic powers into play. I wanted those white people to think that I was an Indian who had grown beyond such notions. The boy was not deceived. He watched those lights with the same awe that I felt. We returned to his home at the mission, and we heard the news that had just come from the telegraph station on the hill. War had been declared. It was August 1914, and many of our own young men were to fight and die in that great war. I thought of our ancient belief that the northern lights are the spirits of the brave departed, who dance, sometimes in joy, sometimes in forewarning, and that if we whistle to them, they will increase in magnitude, will come nearer to the earth that they have left. American anthropologist Catherine McClellan described in great detail various Dene legends regarding the Northern Lights in Part 1 of her 1975 book, My Old People Say, an ethnographic survey of southern Yukon territory. The magnificent Northern Lights, she wrote, which often flare in the autumn and winter skies of southern Yukon, are sometimes feared by natives of all three tribes, namely the southern Shoshone, Tagish, and inland Tlingit, since those which have a red color are thought to presage war and death. Lights which form a ring are also an omen of disaster. The Tagish and inland Tlingit believe that the lights themselves are people who have met violent deaths. Now they play in the sky, and their fate is actually superior to the fate of those who die of illness. Tagish who see a circle of northern lights say that the spirit of someone who has been murdered is going to the world above. McClellan went on to tell the story of a diplomatic hostage held by the inland Tlingit of the Taku River, which runs through the coast mountains southwest of Atlin Lake, British Columbia, and northwest of Juneau, Alaska. Knowing that he was to be executed that day, presumably as punishment for some transgression committed by one of his kinsmen, the prisoner assured his captors that, if the Northern Lights were truly the souls of the slain, he would come out that night and dance with the Aurora. "I will come right down on top of the hill there," he said, pointing to a nearby landmark. "You're going to see it right from here." The hostage was killed, McClellan wrote, and that evening, one Northern Light, just the size of a man, came to the ground at the exact spot where the hostage had promised to be. The Tlingit knew then that the legend of the Northern Lights was true. McClellan went on to describe how the Tagish of southwest Yukon sometimes attempted to avert disaster by blowing at the Northern Lights, especially when they were red and brilliant, pretending to push them away with their hands while shouting a war cry. Like other northern tribes, they regarded the pale blue and green lights as generally harmless. If the lights moved quickly and vigorously, however, they knew that a change in the weather was imminent. McClellan concluded her section on the Northern Lights by describing how the inland Tlingit believed that dangerous predators sometimes announced their presence in the form of a colorful glow resembling that of the aurora, which was often mistaken for that more common phenomenon.